Petitioners include the very framers of the Constitution and a former Duterte official. Itching to travel overseas? Well, the NAIA has already resumed international flights, but don't get your hopes up just yet. Authorities have yet to actually craft a resolution allowing non-essential trips. The 5-day suspension of MRT operations might be extended if they run short on manpower. The Health Department is acknowledging models pointing to 100,000 COVID-19 cases by the end of August. This as some areas in the metro have posted a 100% rise in infections. Quezon City officials have started apprehending quarantine violators, including journalist Howie Severino. Someone just lived through what Tom Hanks' character had to go through in the movie The Terminal. A foreigner had to spend 110 days at the NAIA. We begin tonight with President Duterte trying to allay fears surrounding the controversial antiterrorism law. In a speech aired past midnight on Wednesday, the chief executive broke his silence on the newly signed measure. He echoed what his palace officials said, that it should not be a cause for concern for non-terrorists.
For the law-abiding citizen of this country, I am addressing you with all sincerity. Huwag ho kayong matakot kung hindi ka terorista.
The president defended the government's call to gradually reopen the Philippine economy despite relaxed lockdown restrictions in most parts of the country. In the same speech, the chief executive reiterated that exit travel restrictions have been lifted, but with certain conditions.
Because if we open the entire Philippines and thousands upon thousands of new cases would happen, then we are in deep. Talagang mahirapan tayo.
International flights are back at the NAIA after months of travel restrictions due to COVID-19, but authorities are warning travelers even though non-essential trips are now allowed, rules may be different in your planned destination. Gerard de la Peña reports.
Despite international carriers resuming operations, the NAIA Terminal 3 still seems like a ghost town. International flights have been transferred to Terminal 3 from Terminal 1 after the latter was closed off during the imposition of enhanced community quarantine back in March. On the first day of resumption of international travel at the Terminal 3, several airlines have mounted flights to select destinations. Nippon Airways has trips to Haneda and Narita, KLM to Bangkok, Cathay Pacific to Hong Kong, Qatar Airways to Doha, and Emirates to Dubai. Cebu Pacific and AirAsia meanwhile open flights to various domestic destinations.
Dati na po sila nag-ooperate sa Terminal 1 to enforce social distancing, dahil medyo dumadami ng mga pasahero, we decided to put them back sa Terminal 3.
Malacanang has announced that Filipinos can go on non-essential trips, but they cannot simply do so as of yet. The Bureau of Immigration said the IATF has yet to issue a resolution. Once released, the public has to wait 15 more days before implementation.
Marami pong consideration, including po sa pagkakaroon ng execution of declaration ng rest awareness, na ito ay ipro-provide ng ating airlines. Sama din po yan sa mga conditions na pag bumalik ka rito, dapat magsasubmit ka sa protocol ng testing.
Those departing the country will also have to abide by the restrictions in their destinations. Take the case of Emil, a seafarer who was not allowed to board going to the Netherlands due to restrictions set by Dutch authorities.
Pro na kami sa ganyan changes na pagka sa barko kasi ganun din. Paiba-iba lang hindi naman namin, wala naman fixed diyan kasi.
For now, only OFWs, Filipinos who have permanent resident status abroad, students, as well as foreign nationals may leave the country.
And it's not all about flights. Rehab efforts at the NAIA have also just hit a snag. The government has rejected the NAIA Consortium's revised proposal for the Gateway's rehabilitation. The changes were meant to make the project viable in the new normal, which the group said is the only way to move forward with the project. The consortium is composed of conglomerates like Ayala Corporation, Aboitiz Equity, JG Summit, and Lucitan led Asia's emerging dragon. But Finance Secretary Sunny Dominguez says there are two other proponents who are willing to take over the rehabilitation plan.
We're not setting aside the NAIA consortium. They're the ones who set it aside. It's not us. But I'm telling you, there are at least two more who are interested in the project at the terms that we have indicated. We're not worried about it. We believe that these other two proponents are willing to step up to the plate here.
With more than 2 weeks to go until President Duterte's fifth SONA, government's economic managers have laid out reports on the country's state. Despite the expected gloomy output for the past months, the group remains optimistic of a rebound as early as next year. Shaila Francisco has this report.
A black swan event. This is how Economic Development Cluster Chairman and Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III described the COVID-19 pandemic during the first virtual pre-SONA forum. The country's economy contracted by 0.2% in the first quarter and is expected to shrink further by the second quarter. Unemployment also climbed to 17.7% in April, while tax collections plunged by 16% in the first half of 2020.
The COVID-19 health emergency is perhaps the toughest economic crisis most of our people will live through. In other words, without this global economic crisis, we had realized better economic outcomes for our people. Our economy was ready to soar.
But economic managers are seeing signs of recovery. The Bureau of Customs surpassed its June collection target. The manufacturing sector increased utilization and performance, while 75% of the economy is now open, up from just 25% in April. Inflation for 2020 and 2021 is still seen settling within the government's target, while GDP is expected to bounce back between 8 to 9% next year.
The Philippines entered into the global pandemic from a position of strength. Thus, the country's sound fundamentals will lend support to our response to the public health pandemic and propel the economy into a strong recovery in the coming years.
To aid in the recovery, the government has resorted to loans to cover shortfall in its spending. The government has so far raised $5.3 billion in offshore budgetary support while raising 1.2 trillion pesos domestically. 375 billion pesos have been spent to assist small businesses, workers, and boost the health sector. Dominguez noted that the government was able to borrow at a lower cost due to strong credit rating.
We are planning to bring up our debt to GDP ratio to around 50% from 39%. So the debt is very manageable and it is affordable for us. So I'd like to assure you, sir, and the entire Filipino people that we have the capacity to borrow. We are borrowing at very low rates and we have the capacity to pay these loans in the future.
On the infrastructure front, DPWH Secretary Mark Villar says the government is providing ICT equipment and connectivity to schools to aid in blended learning. Up for completion this year are the T-Plex and the Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3. Villar is confident that no build project will be shelved.
It remains on track. Karamihan po ng mga projects halos patapos na rin. So in terms of delivery, definitely, I'm certain we'll be able to deliver.
Meanwhile, officials say they are working with Congress on another stimulus package and are already finalizing terms. They're also still pushing for other legislative reforms, including the remaining tax reform packages. Shaila Francisco, WR1 News.
The President's former Corporate Government Council head filed a petition against the newly enacted anti-terror law. Lawyer Philip Jurado's filing is the fifth petition against the measure. Like the other petitions, he is seeking a TRO, and he says some of the parts of the measure are unconstitutional.
Under this law, particularly Section 29, that right was given to antiterrorism law. Dapat ang mag-waive yung detainee. But apparently, ang nangyari ang mag-waive dito is yung ATC in behalf of the detainee. To us, that is very unconstitutional.
Framers of the Constitution, Christian Monzon and Felicitas Arroyo, also joined the legal challenge against the anti-terror law, but they are not after a temporary restraining order. Monzon wants some sections of the law to be outright declared as void and for the Supreme Court to prohibit it from being implemented. We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, authorities are tweaking their case reporting strategy yet again, this time focusing on active cases. And health officials are not so keen about conducting random testing for MRT passengers. They say that would be too resource intensive. I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. The Health Department has not yet released COVID-19 updates for today. Earlier, the agency said they will update the public at 8 p.m. That's around 4 hours later than usual. As of yesterday, July 7th, the country has recorded nearly 48,000 cases, more than 1,300 fatalities, and more than 12,000 recoveries. In a meeting in Davao City last night, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said a new reporting strategy will focus on the number of active cases will be imposed in the coming days. In a media forum, the Department of Health acknowledged the projection of UP experts that COVID-19 cases in the country could shoot up to 100,000 by the end of August. Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere noted, however, the estimate could still change depending on various factors.
Pero kailangan nating i-interpret with caution kapag mga estimates. Kasi sabi nga natin, these are models and these models have assumptions.
Meanwhile, Vergere reported that there are areas in Metro Manila that have recorded a 100% rise in infections due to community transmission.
Merong mga ibang factors na nung pinag-aaralan namin, nakikita natin na yung iba galing sa repatriates, may iba naman galing dun sa sinasabi natin ng mga workers or these closed institutions.
The University of the Philippines Okta research team has proposed randomized COVID-19 testing among MRT passengers, but the health department says this would be resource intensive. Even without such testing, Vergere said passengers should still observe minimum health standards to minimize exposure.
Sa tingin ko, no, yung randomized testing of each of those who's going to ride the MRT, for example, kailangan natin pag-isipan na maigi kasi nga it's resource intensive. And sa ngayon, ang gusto muna nating i-focus would be the subgroups.
And it is day 2 of the 5-day shutdown of MRT operations. As early as now, the rail line's management is apprehensive that they might have to extend the suspension should they run short on manpower. JC Cosico tells us more.
The birth pains of an MRT last commute in the metro might have already passed. On the second day since the rail line ceased operations, passengers no longer had to wait for hours just to get a ride in the MRT bus augmentation service.
Ngayon medyo mabilis. Pero kahapon 40 minutes. Mahigit. Mas okay ito kasi mabilis yung biyahe.
But with limited designated bus stops, the likes of Avelia May said the commute remains to be a struggle.
Ang MRT kasi per station bumababa, naghihinto. Tapos, ito kasi, syempre kung ako ay Buendia, Ayala ako bumaba. Kung maraming commuters sa Buendia, dapat may Buendia station din mababa. Hindi yung Ayala lang kasi malayo na eh.
The MRT3 management started to dispatch buses at around 5 a.m. on Wednesday, 30 minutes ahead of the usual schedule. Their fleet has 90 bus units which pick up and drop off passengers in selected bus stops. Starting Thursday, augmented bus units will be deployed starting at 4 a.m. ahead of the usual 5:30 a.m. schedule.
Dahil nga nag-shutdown temporarily yung operations ng MRT3, maraming mga pasahero na pumupunta ng mas maaga dun sa mga istasyon para makakait bus. Kaya naman in-adjust natin ito.
MRT3 halted its operations after 202 train personnel tested positive for COVID-19. Majority are depot personnel. Of its over 3,200 employees, 339 have yet to get tested for COVID-19 on Wednesday. The rail line needs at least 1,300 personnel to resume partial operations. If unmet, Transportation Assistant Secretary Goddes Lebiran said the 5-day suspension might be extended.
Para sa susunod na 2 hanggang 3 araw ay lumabas na yung resulta kung saan yun yung pagbabasihan natin kung gaano kabilis na magkakaroon tayo ng resumption ng partial or limited operations ng MRT3.
MRT officials have advised passengers who had direct contact with ticket sellers in 4 MRT stations to observe their conditions and undergo home quarantine. They are also looking to utilize technology in its contact tracing efforts, particularly in the railway sector. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
And these are the other big stories today. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte has tested positive for COVID-19. Belmonte says she is not experiencing any symptoms. The mayor's office as well as common areas at the City Hall have been closed for disinfection. The Baguio City Court has ordered the arrest of 3 PMA cadets and 3 military doctors over the hazing death of Cadet 4th Class Darwin Dormitorio last year. The arrest warrants say the offense is non-bailable for the cadets. The doctors, however, are each entitled to 200,000 peso bail. The 9 police officers involved in the fatal shooting of 4 soldiers in Holosulu have been transferred to Camp Crame. PNP Chief Police General Archie Gamboa says this will ensure the availability of the policemen to face the NBI's probe into the matter. Motorcycle backriding may soon see the light of day again. That's as the IATF once again hints at finally allowing its return, but some safety parameters need to be put in place. Lynn Olivario has the details.
Glenn Caparo used to work as a seafarer, but because of the pandemic, he had to return home and look for other ways to earn a living. He's now a courier service rider. As much as he wants to ferry his wife to and from work every day, he can't, as pillion riding remains prohibited.
Mahirap po kasi pati yung asawa ko nga nag-i-stay ngayon dahil ayaw nga magbawal nga yung angkas. Simula nung nag-lockdown, hindi na siya nakakauwi. Nag-3 buwan na.
Palace spokesman Harry Roque reiterated that backriding has been allowed in principle among private motorcycles as long as there's a protective shield between the driver and the backrider.
Well, in principle, na-approve po yan, no? Ng IATF. Pero yung guidelines, i-issue po yan ng DOTR at saka ng NTF. So ang napupusuan na po nila ay yung disenyo po ni Governor Yap, yung paggamit po ng parang shield, no, para maghiwalay po yung driver at saka yung kaangkas.
But not all drivers are amenable to the makeshift shields.
Delikado kasi man, pag sumemplang, pwede mabasag po yun. Sa tingin ko, depende siguro sa pag-set up yan. Kung
Sa akin lang, pag baka mahangin sa iba kasi tuloy nagpatakbo, di ba?
Meanwhile, City Mayor Sara Duterte will submit an appeal to the IATF to allow backriding in public transportation in Davao. She said she's in talks with Bohol Governor Arthur Yap, who had already asked the IATF to allow angkas in the province. For News 5, Lynn Olivario, We Are One News.
Coming up on the big story, Quezon City is cracking down on protocol violators. But what's a violation? One prominent journalist was apprehended for lowering his mask to have a drink. And a European national took temporary residence at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport for 110 days. How did he survive? Find out after the break. This is the big story. I'm Robbie Alampay. The Quezon City LGU apprehended hundreds of suspected quarantine protocol violators, among them a veteran journalist who just pulled down his face mask for a drink. Camille Samonte has details.
Face masks have become part of the new normal as it is seen as one of the best ways to mitigate the further spread of COVID-19. To ensure that people wear them in public, the Quezon City LGU has started conducting operations to capture violators. Among those was Teresa.
Umupo ako sa wait and shade. May hinihintay ako, tinawagan ko. Kakatanggal ko lang po ng face mask. Tapos saktong may dumaan na kagad na dumaan sa mga barangay tanod.
Veteran journalist and COVID-19 survivor Howie Severino was also apprehended. Severino was out riding with his friends when they decided to stop at a store. Authorities then brought Severino to Amoranto Stadium along with more than 800 quarantine violators to attend a seminar on COVID-19. But Severino explained that he had to pull down his face mask to be able to drink. He also pointed out that they were practicing physical distancing and they were outdoors, where the risk of infection is much lower than indoors. He assured authorities that he has already recovered from the disease, but they said improper wearing of face masks is tantamount to not wearing one at all.
Yung uminom ng tubig at saka umiinom ng tubig, magkaibang issue yun. Kasi ang nakita nung nasa una, actual na umiinom siya ng tubig, wala siyang mask, that's valid. Ang nakita nung sa huli, tapos na siyang uminom, ibabalik niya raw yung mask. Pero inamin naman ni Howie na wala pa siyang mask, ibabalik niya kasi uminom eh. The thing is, hindi niya hawak yung water bottle.
Severino was then released after his reasons were justified. Quezon City authorities maintained that they will be strict in monitoring those who are not wearing face masks.
Eksakto yung ating batas. Pag sinabi kang no mask ka. Di ba? Kaya nagbabike, kaya naglalakad ka, kaya nagja-jogging ka, kaya ano pa yung sinasabi nila? Ang aming ordinansa, wala naman sinabi pag nag-jogging ka at wala kang mask, okay lang eh.
Violators will have to pay fines of up to 3,000 pesos. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Politicians should not be thin-skinned. That is the reminder of a senator after some lawmakers cried foul over ABS-CBN's alleged biased reporting during the network's franchise hearing. Mian Los Baños with the report.
When it comes to so-called biased and unfair news reports, Senator Nancy Binay says she and her family have had their fair share. She recalled the left and right Senate investigations into her father and former Vice President Jejomar Binay back in 2015. The lawmaker also remembered frequenting headlines when she first ran for senator in 2013. But these, says Binay, should not be a factor in deciding ABS-CBN's fate.
ABS was not fair to us. For me, that is a fact. Pero yun nga dapat hindi yun kasama doon sa issue ng pagre-renew ng franchise ng ABS. Kasi di ba, parang that's between me and ABS. Huwag natin idama yung buong bayan.
Binay recalled seeking help from the network's ombudsman to raise their complaints, but as politicians, she says they should not be onion-skinned. In the lower house, several lawmakers cried foul over ABS-CBN's alleged biased reporting. Asked if Solons at some point abused hearings to forward personal issues, the senator had this to say.
Coming from 25 hearings, parang minsan, di ba? Minsan may pagkakataon na napupunta nga dun sa parang ganong perception na nagkakaroon ng abuse of authority.
Senate President Soto believes the best way to deal with supposed hurtful news reports is to face them head-on.
Harapin nila. Harapin nila. Kung hindi naman totoo yung sinasabi, lalabas at lalabas ang katotohanan. The truth is very difficult to hide.
For Soto, the government should not in any way meddle with the media's editorial content.
Na hindi lang sa news organizations nakikialam, hindi dapat nakikialam gobyerno. Government should be out of business.
Yes.
Government should not meddle with business. May mga pagkakamali o may mga violations, okay, punahin mo. Pero that's different from pakikialam.
Pala spokesman Harry Roque earlier insisted that President Duterte remains neutral on ABS-CBN's franchise issue. He then called on Solons to decide based on their conscience. The lower house is expected to finally vote on ABS-CBN's franchise at the committee level on Thursday. For News 5 Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
The Department of Education says more than 200,000 students have transferred from private schools to public schools. Latest enrollment data show that the number, some 148,000, are in elementary. To date, DepEd says the total number of enrollees has reached 18 million nationwide, with public schools taking the lion's share. Education Secretary Leonor Briones attributed the influx of public school transferees to the economic slump brought on by COVID-19. Meanwhile, private companies, including PLDT Smart, have supported the DepEd's push for blended learning. PLDT Public Affairs Head Mon Isberto says the company is poised to produce quality learning content for students. PLDT and Signal, the owner of this channel, are part of the MVP group. The World Health Organization is acknowledging that COVID-19 may be airborne. The WHO says the virus may spread through air more easily than previously believed, lingering longer and moving for further distances between people. The organization clarified, however, that it is not final and a new study will be out in the coming days. The statement comes after hundreds of scientists pleaded with the agency to update its guidance on the COVID pandemic. Now, can you imagine living in Linea for more than 3 months, a la Tom Hanks in the terminal? A European tourist lived through just that. He was trapped in the airport for 110 days. Roman Trofimov is finally going to his home in Estonia after he found himself stranded in Linea because of travel restrictions. In a Facebook post, the tourist said he arrived in Manila on March 20, but he was denied entry. He was unable to fly back to his country after his airline took his passport and stopped operations. Trofimov had been staying in the departure area, living off food and hygiene products from airport staff. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News, for more in-depth analysis. Visit our webpage, onenews.ph. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. You can register for a free account now at signalplay.com. And then you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.
Binigit ka raw ni Martin kanina.
Ano, bullshit nga.